Hi guys, welcome to this week's Classified here on Ickonic.com. This week we're going to have a look at AI and the kind of fake competition that's going on between the US and China. Apparently they were so shocked by this DeepSeek technology that came out that they've had to rethink everything they're doing for this Stargate project that they're going to pump billions into. Well, it turns out they knew about it all along, and obviously they do. And these guys from these different countries who appear to be in competition, as per always, are actually working together and cross-pollinating technology and students across the board from these prestigious universities that really seem to be hubs for intelligence agencies to pluck young, impressionable kids out of with talent and use them for this wider agenda. So we'll be looking at DeepSeek today, where it came from, but mostly how the US and China are clearly working together across the board. And it's actually quite well known, but not so much to the general public who get this, oh, we're in competition, China bad, Russia bad, we must keep up. The whole thing's a facade. Let's have a look at it now. So DeepSeek burst onto the scene a few weeks ago, apparently shook the US tech industry to its core and the stock markets wobbled all over the place. But they knew about this a long time ago, of course they did, including Donald Trump. So who is the guy that's supposed to be the founder, at least the poster boy, for DeepSeek? His name is Lang Wenfang, and he's a Chinese businessman, and he's behind DeepSeek AI app, which overtook ChatGPT and spooked the US market. It didn't spook the US market. They knew full well that this was in the works and has been for a long time. DeepSeek, as an AI company founded by Lang Wenfang, has surpassed ChatGPT as the most downloaded free app in the US. Well, it would do if it was free. The launch triggered a market crash, notably impacting big tech stocks like Nvidia, which fell 17%. That's the chips that go into this machine. Lang aims to establish DeepSeek as a leading AI platform. So it just come out of the blue. It's one of these ones they made in the garage. You know, they do in Silicon Valley with Elon Musk and all of these guys, Zuckerberg, working in these garages, creating these things because they're geniuses between eating sandwiches and pickled onion lunch and having some Dairy Lee Dunkers. They managed to come up with these things. It's total nonsense, obviously. And the same play that goes on in the US and these prestigious universities goes on in China as well. And they cross-pollinate and have done for decades. Who is Lang Wenfang? So Lang is 40. He's a Chinese entrepreneur and businessman with a background in finance. In 2015, he co-founded the quantitative hedge fund Highflyer. Just had a go with his mates, a few mates from this university. After completing graduation from Zhejiang University, which is one of these prestigious universities, through Highflyer, he used AI for trading strategies to predict market trends and help make investment decisions. So you just did it. You're supposed to believe that these are these genius kids that just do this stuff, you know, just hanging around, messing about. In 2021, he started buying thousands of NVIDIA graphics chips and processors as an AI side project. Again, sitting around, messing about with me mates, before Joe Biden-led US government restricted the US exports of AI chips to China. What they actually did was restricted the power of the exports. So in terms of the power of the chip, they downgraded the chip by the looks of it, if that's to be believed. So during this time, his acquaintances saw this AI side project as a quirky hobby without any goal. Again, this is this whole kind of innocent kids, just geniuses that happen to stumble across something, messing around in their garage. Total nonsense, obviously. He started a hedge fund with his mates. I'm not sure about me and you. We're quite busy every day. We don't get time to start hedge funds with our mates. It's obviously nonsense. Obviously backed from day one, and these people are fostered and put into these positions. So Highflyer, this is hedge fund he started with a couple of his mates. Highflyer is a Chinese hedge fund company incorporated in February 2016. Its legal registration address is in China. It is the founder and backer of AI firm DeepSeek, so you can see the money filtered through there. But apparently DeepSeek was just a little side project with some spare chips sent over from the US that he collected. Total nonsense, obviously, and now suddenly it's more powerful than ChatGPT and all of these other ones, which is also debatable as well. Highflyer was founded in February 2016 by Wang Feng and two of his classmates from the Zhejiang University. So this is the university. This is another Yale. This is another Oxford, another Cambridge, a place where the intelligence agents go to foster and incubate these young talents, and they do have obviously skills and talents, and bring them into the fold when they leave and promise them all these ridiculous high level paid jobs. And really they're a bunch of geeks that are star-studded and overwhelmed. They don't know what they're getting themselves into, or at least they ignore what they're getting themselves into. This young man, Wang Feng, is 40 now, so he's not so young, with a couple of his mates from this university, started this hedge fund company. I'm not buying it. And now they have over 450 different investments in products, and that more than likely all be in artificial intelligence and technology. So this is the university. And remember, these are universities that the CIA openly go into and scout. J.D. Vance is another one who was scouted from one of the universities by Peter Thiel. It's the same cult. It's the same play, it's just over in China. It's the same thing, and they cross-pollinate. Zhejiang University is a public research university in Zhejiang, China. It is affiliated with the Ministry of Education. The university is part of Double First Class Construction Project 885 and Project 211. Now, this is what's really important. These two projects are deeply connected to the CCP. And that's the point. They funnel this stuff down to get people, these young kids in university, in certain positions and put them in play into this wider arena and agenda. So for Trump to come out and say, oh, we didn't see DeepSeek coming, of course you did. Not only that, you knew from December anyway, because the whole AI, artificial intelligence industry knew about DeepSeek, at least in December, but obviously they've known about this for years. So Project 985, which was one of the two projects that I've just talked about, which is the other of which is Project 211. So Project 985 was a higher education development and sponsorship scheme of the Chinese central government for creating world-class higher education institutions. So they're creating these institutions. It's a government subsidiary. And it's initiated in 1998. There were 39 universities selected to be part of this program. Project 211 and Project 985 were both initiated by Jiang Zemin, his administration in the 1990s. They were nullified in 2016 and replaced by the Double First Class Construction in 2017 by the ex-Xi Jinping administration, which is what we're seeing here. So the Zhenghai University, along with Project 985 and Project 211, come under this Double First Class Construction, which is connected, obviously, in with the Chinese central government. The Chinese central government, which is also the state council, directly oversees principal-level people's governments and in practice maintains memberships with top levels of the Chinese Communist Party. Now that makes it sound like it's an equal footing, but then you read this bit. The State Council is legally required to implement the policies of the CCP. Aside from a few, members of the State Council are also members of the CCP's Central Committee. And the Central Committee are the guys that created these universities, and they're doing the bidding of the CCP. So in essence, the CCP are creating these projects to find these young talents in these universities, foster them, fund them, put them into hedge funds, give them opportunities to create money to put into these systems that are all going to come together. And that's the CCP. So this says the founder of the artificial intelligence firm DeepSeek, touted as 2025's biggest dark horse in the open source large language model arena, emerged as the industry's new face in China at a symposium hosted by Premier Li Qiang in Beijing on Monday. Again, these people are funneled through this system. We see it in the UK with Oxford and Cambridge. We see it in America with the Yale Skull and Bones, and we see it here in the universities. It's no different in China. Liang Wenfeng, 40, took part in the meeting where a select group of industry experts in the fields of technology, education, science, culture, health, and sports offered Li their opinions and suggestions for a draft government work report. They told him what to do, according to official news agency. This was important. So Hangzhou-based startup DeepSeek last December, so December 2024, made waves in the global AI industry after benchmark tests showed that its DeepSeek version 3, which was built on a shoestring budget, apparently, outperformed rival models developed with more resources by the likes of Meta Platforms and ChatGPT creator OpenAI. So they knew about this in December anyway, at least officially. They'd have known about it for years because they, again, cross-pollinate people, especially students, into these different universities that go back and forth from China to the US all the time. And so this wasn't a sudden shock. So when they come out and they talked about this Stargate project and this 500 billion investment, and then a week later, this pops up, DeepSeek, it's all planned. This open source stuff, in my opinion, is about getting the public to invest their own time and energy into creating technology that is going to be used against them. And then the private sector are doing the same there. But the private sector is the baddie, the open source is the goodie. Everybody can use it. But everybody's contributing to the same technology when it comes in together. Even the United States Congress, and obviously there's good people in the United States Congress, there's good people in the UK government, there's good people in the UK police. It's obviously these things are infiltrated, so you can't just take the whole corporation, the institution, and say it's bad. The CIA is bad. It doesn't make sense. There's different levels and there's different factions within that. Like there's humans are very much different from one edge of a office to the other. You'll have a range of different people with different motives and agendas. So the CCP on the Quad, and this is from the United States Congress itself, they were concerned about this. How American taxpayers and universities fund the CCP's advanced military and technological research. Remember what we just said. The CCP is very much behind that university and that project that gave rise to this young lad and DeepSeek. That's the point. So here's the executive summary. Let's have a quick look at this. So the Chinese Communist Party exploits federally funded research and partnerships between the US universities and People's Republic of China, defense-linked universities to achieve technological breakthroughs both in technologies with military applications and in critical and emerging technologies where the PRC lags behind the US and its allies. They are one and the same. They are sharing university students, universities, these actual universities that are created by the CCP and in the US to create this technology. There is no difference between the two, other than on the surface in the general public, you're made to believe that they're competing when they're not. And even those involved with the United States Congress are concerned about this, where the US taxpayers' money is going into technology that's being shared across with China in artificial intelligence. Our investigation found that due to a lack of legal guardrails around federally funded research, hundreds of millions of dollars in US federal research funding over the last decade have contributed to the PRC's strategy goals by helping the PRC achieve advancements in dual-use, critical and emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, like hypersonic weapons, artificial intelligence, fourth-generation nuclear weapons technology, and semiconductor technology. They are sharing information across the board. We identified 8,800 plus publications supported by DoD funding, published with co-authors affiliated with the PRC institutions, China, as CCP, and an additional 185 such publications supported by IC funding. So across the board, they are sharing this information. So when you see this, we need to keep up with China, it's total nonsense. You're getting given both left and right paradigms that are leading to the same outcome, which will be artificial intelligence across the board. The China social credit system is to be implemented in the West. We've known that for years. And this is just proof that these guys pretend to be enemies when they're openly, not for the general public, but even in Congress, sharing technology and students across the board. So American taxpayer-funded researchers are collaborating with the PRC research and academic institutions involved in military and defence research and development on critical and emerging technologies. As we've just seen, the case studies in this report illustrate this troubling pattern facilitated by lack of guardrails and enforcement of existing law. Joint institutions facilitate expert transfer and foster connections with blacklisted and other defence-tied institutions. To the PRC's strategic benefit, universities underreport and the government has failed to enforce reporting mandates on foreign funding for the PRC, so US funding to China. Stronger safeguards and more robust enforcement are urgently required. So they are openly worried about this in Congress, but you won't hear about this. The PRC also exploits Americans' cutting-edge research ecosystem by fostering collaborations between PRC universities and American research universities, to acquire dual-use critical and emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, mRNA technologies. Chinese officials have openly acknowledged that such partnerships give the PRC access to a treasure trove of technical talent ripe for its taking. These young students are going to China, to the US, back and forth, and trading information, skills and talents. And that's the truth. China also uses a range of illegal and illicit tactics, such as cyber espionage and coerced technology transfer, to acquire US technology and know-how. It's not US technology. It's Chinese and US technology. This is global cult technology. Again, what these people aren't really pointing out is that there's no difference between the two. That's the point. Now, that's probably what they're hinting at, and they can't come out and say it. But the clear fact is, there is no difference. So when Donald Trump comes out and said he's worried about China, and it's a wake-up call, in the background, they've been sharing information and technologies all along. So open source, and I just commented on this earlier, open source for me is just basically getting people to work for free and giving away that technology in the guise of it being available to everyone. Open source is source code that is made freely available for possible modification and redistribution. Products include permission to use and view the source code, design documents, or content on the product. So everything like that would usually be, if it's corporate, hidden, and you wouldn't be able to mess with the source code at all. And that's basically what it's about. You can create your own technologies on top of that. Open source promotes universal access via an open source or free license to products, design or blueprint, and universal distribution of that design or blueprint, and just making adjustments and changes to it. That all sounds great in a free market, in a free world. But actually what's happening here is that's coming back to the intelligence agencies. They're not only using that technology and the skills and the talents of the people that are doing it for free now, they are highlighting and profiling the young people that are capable of doing these things and giving them positions within the cult. One of such which is PyTorch. PyTorch is a machine learning library based on the Torch library, used for applications such as computer vision and natural language processing, originally developed by Meta AI and now part of the Linux Foundation umbrella. It is one of the most popular deep learning frameworks alongside others such as TensorFlow and Paddle, offering free and open source software released under the modified BSD license. Although the Python interface is more polished and the primary focus of the development, PyTorch is also a C++ interface. Basically, so this is developed by Meta and then put out for free. And then people modify it, make it better, and they send it back in. And then they, as I said, they have the tech for free, the manpower for free, and they can also profile people that are capable of doing these things. It's absurd to me. It's all leading in the same direction, whether it's open source or it's corporate. That was created by Meta, PyTorch. This is the other one, TensorFlow. TensorFlow is an open source collection of tools and libraries that help developers build and train deep learning models. Again, open source. So people are going, oh, it's free, I can do this, it's free and everyone can have a go. Where do you think that information's going? Where's the learning going? It's going back in to these intelligence, artificial intelligence, DARPA, military weapons. The people who are using this open source, in my opinion, are the ones training this stuff. And we're also putting all our data in there as well. But they're creating their own systems for free. They're getting people to do it for free. They must be laughing. So this is TensorFlow as well, developed and released by the Google Brain team. So Meta did the other one, and Google Brain team do this one. Google is DARPA, ARPA. It's a military weapon. That's exactly what it is. So you're not getting away from any of this stuff with this open source stuff. You're just creating technology for them to rip off and use. And the Chinese and the Americans are clearly working together, and there is no race, like the space race. It was all fake. It was all leading to the same point. The framework received a major update in 2019 in the form of TensorFlow 2.0. TensorFlow applications can run on either conventional CPUs or CPUs. Furthermore, Google Cloud users can run TensorFlow on Google's own TensorFlow processing unit TPU chips, which are designed to speed up TensorFlow tasks. Again, you're using their technology. It's no different. So this is the whole nonsense about the US and China being in a race and wanting to kind of make sure that we, that we don't get taken over by the Chinese or the Russians. So in a meeting at the White House on Friday, so that was last Friday, US President Trump and NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang discussed the emerging challenges posed by China's AI advancements. They knew about them. These NVIDIA chips that were used there, this has all been known because, as we just proved, the CCP set up universities and institutions just as much as the US do. And between those two universities and all of those institutions, they share university students and techs and skills and advancements. So they are worried about the emerging challenges posed by China's AI advancements, particularly the rapid rise of DeepSeek, which they knew about from December. And obviously this thing has been in play for a very long time. These universities and these guys behind DeepSeek have been part of this system for a very long time. They didn't just come out of nowhere and do it in the garage with their mates. A Chinese AI company that has disrupted the global tech industry. It hasn't disrupted it. It's disrupted the narrative on the surface of the mainstream. They knew about this for years. The conversation focused on strengthening the US leadership in AI technology and tightening restrictions on exporting advanced AI chips to China, whilst at the very same time sharing students across the board, and even the Congress is worried about this, where they share this tech anyway. This is just for public consumption. There is no divide. While President Trump did not disclose specific details, he probably doesn't understand what's going on, he describes the meeting as good and praised Huang as a gentleman. DeepSeek has recently sent shockwaves through the tech world by introducing an AI model that matches the performance of leading US technologies, but at a fraction of the cost, allegedly. Its launch has raised concerns about China's ability to close the gap in AI development with the US. Close the gap? You've just told me that they're way ahead. There is no gap. There is no gap. They've been bleeding all over each other for a very long time. Within days of its debut, DeepSeek became the most downloaded app in Apple's App Store, and its emergence wiped approximately $1 trillion off the market value of US tech stocks, including a 17% plunge in NVIDIA's shares. The development has reignited fears that China could challenge the US state's dominance in AI. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's all fake. Even Congress, as we said, just back there, Congress, the CCP on the Quad, how American taxpayers and universities fund the CCP's advanced military and technological research. They're even concerned about it. So this isn't something that's going to happen. They're working together anyway. And now you see Donald Trump over in Ukraine with Doge, the worst name I've ever heard. Totally ridiculous. With another fake frontman, Elon Musk, apparently taking money away from Ukraine and stopping funding them, although that only seemed to happen for about 36 hours. Because they want these minerals, these precious minerals that are used for AI technology in exchange for the money. Although it's all right to still give $1 billion to Israel, that's apparently not a waste of money. Total nonsense, obviously, because they're all part of the cult and Israel owns and runs the cult. As part of the US response, Trump's administration is considering further restrictions on the NVIDIA's H20 chips designed for the Chinese market. So that was the downgraded chip. These chips, capable of powering AI software, were specifically developed to comply with previous export limits imposed by the Biden administration. So he wants to even cut them down. But the fact of the matter is, this is all for show. And they're all working together behind the scenes and sharing tech through the universities. The US government has long relied on export controls to maintain its technological edge. No, it hasn't. It's relied on the public's belief in export controls, not the actual export controls itself. It's all a facade. It's all theatre. But DeepSeek's rise has exposed vulnerabilities in this strategy. As the US grapples with its response, the battle for AI dominance will be a defining feature of US to China relations in the years ahead. The outcome will impact the global technology landscape and influence geopolitical dynamics in an increasingly interconnected world. They're telling you within there anyway that this world is connected, but it's already there. What's better than to look out for a problem that already exists? You're still looking elsewhere because you don't recognise the problem. The fact is, those export controls are for public consumption, and the US-China relations with this technology has been going on back and forth for a very, very long time. There is no divide between the US and the Chinese artificial intelligence programs. It's very, very interesting to see how blatantly obvious it is that these guys share tech across the board, and then the public consumption and the public narrative is they're against each other, and China's bad, and we need to keep up with China and create our own artificial intelligence infrastructure so they don't take us over, although we'd like to take you over and attach your brain into the system. It's total nonsense, total farce. They're all working together. All these countries, there are no borders and countries and changes between these governments. Yes, at a lower level, like these guys at the Congress who are concerned, of course there will be. They're good people in all of these systems. It's the upper levels that appear to, in every way, shape and form, and every different area we look into, coexist and cross over into different aspects of secret societies. And that's how it works. But it's blatantly obvious that the US and China share artificial intelligence technology. It's not even hidden. So this is from The National. Despite the talk of deepening rivalry between the US and China in artificial intelligence, our chart paints a different picture. Far from being locked in a tech war, the two nations are closely linked in an AI research. Absolutely they are. With collaboration driving much of the innovation that underpins the major leaps in AI development today. Exactly. Perfectly put. Data from the Emerging Technologies Observation at University of Georgetown reveals how intertwined these two tech powerhouses are. In the past decade, researchers in China and the US have co-written more than 46,000 papers on AI. 46,000 papers. And are supposed to be in competition with each other. More than any other pair of nations, the UK and Australia rank a distant second and third, respectively, on China's list of research partners. They're research partners, that's the point, they're all research partners. By working together, researchers from China and the US have made progress in fields from machine learning to natural language processing, creating a shared foundation for the next wave of AI applications. Much of this has been achieved through partnerships between US universities, such as Stanford and Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is MIT, and Chinese institutions, including Tsinghua University and the university that I spoke of earlier that this young man from DeepSeek came from. This is how it works. They swap students back and forth. However, this spirit of collaboration contrasts sharply with the narrative playing out in markets and among tech companies, which changes the market because you think you're in a tech race when you're not. So they're controlling the market anyway. So they knew about DeepSeek coming out. So they talk about, oh, all this money just dropped off the stock market. They knew because they're controlling both. They're sharing. It's one big tech company. The recent rise of Chinese AI startup DeepSeek is a case in point. DeepSeek made headlines this week with the launch of its R1 model, designed to rival OpenAI's Chat GPT-4. The real shock, however, was not the model's capability, but its cost. DeepSeek says it trained R1 in just 2 months. Total nonsense. At a cost of $6 million. Again, total nonsense. It's always an over-exaggerated, ridiculous lie. Just met 3 mates at university and we started a hedge fund. By comparison, Meta reportedly spent $60 million to develop its Llama model, while OpenAI is said to have poured more than $600 million into the training of Chat GPT-4. The extraordinary efficiency of DeepSeek has rattled markets and sparked concerns about whether the US is falling behind in the global AI race. No, it's all one. There is no race. They're all one team. Investors and policymakers have called for accelerated innovations to maintain America's edge, and that's your point. We need to put more money in the US coffers for AI. Stargate, $600 billion. Because we've got to keep up with the Chinese, who can apparently do that for $6 million. But you knew that, because you're all working together for it, while sharing 46,000 papers on AI between the US and China through the universities. It's such a farce and such a load of nonsense that it's sad to see people falling over themselves to take one side or another, and they always need to take a side. And this is just an abstract from Nature magazine. And now I would like to say Nature magazine was very much controlled at the very early days by the Eugenics X Club of Thomas Henry Huxley. So China and the US produce more impactful AI research when collaborating together. So this is their conclusion: is we're just better together. We should just work together. You do anyway. You do anyway. So the conclusion and the end goal that they come to is what they're doing anyway. They just need to get the public to accept it. They're doing it anyway. And this goes across the board. Artificial intelligence has become a disruptive technology, promising to grant a significant economic and strategic advantage to nations that harness its power. China, with its recent push towards AI adoption, is challenging the US position as the global leader in this field. It's not. They're the same. There is no challenge there. They are supporting each other. Given AI's massive potential, as well as the fierce geopolitical tensions between China and the US, which also are more likely mostly fake, several recent policies have been put in place to discourage AI scientists from migrating to or collaborating with the other nation. So this is going against what the Congress are worried about, trying to block that link there. These guys are saying, no, we should just keep that going. That's good for us all. Do you see how it works here? They give you both options and control you within that scape, within that red or blue option, positive or negative. We find that since 2000, China and the US have led the field in terms of impact, novelty, productivity, and workforce. Most AI scientists who move to China come from the US. Here we go. So they're just supporting exactly what I've said. And most who move to the US come from China. Exactly. They're going back and forth already. You're telling me that. Highlighting a notable bi-direction talent migration. No, notable. that is notable of a source of information and technology sharing across the board, and the fact that they just collaborate and always have done. Moreover, the vast majority of those moving in either direction have Asian ancestry. Upon moving, those scientists continue to collaborate frequently with those in the original country. Although the number of collaborations between the two countries has increased since the dawn of the millennium, such collaborations continue to be relatively rare. They're not relatively rare, because as we've just seen, they've done 46,000 papers together. That's just Nature magazine trying to get the public to accept something that's already happening. And there we have it. So when Donald Trump comes out and he's all shocked by DeepSeek and China taking over, you know now that even the United States Congress are worried about the fact that it's blatantly obvious that the US and China collaborate on producing AI technologies, and that is connected to the Chinese Communist Party, because the technology that they use for their social credit system is due to be rolled out here in the West, and Donald Trump is a massive, massive part of allowing that to happen. So guys, I hope that cleared up a few things. We know these guys put out a fake narrative and a fake pretend enemies whilst they pretend to fight each other and be enemies on the surface and out in the legacy media. But underneath the surface and what they're actually doing is always working together and collaborating. Maybe not at the lower levels, and as is seen by people being actually worried about it in the US Congress, there are genuine people in these systems. So just to go in and bulldoze and say take the CIA out and take the Congress down, and there's rotten apples in every system. This is far more nuanced, but at the top levels, these people do collaborate together, and you can see where the juggernaut is moving, and that is into a very quickly established smart AI technology grid that's going to cover the whole planet, and we know that. And Elon Musk is a huge part of that. Donald Trump is a huge poster boy for pushing that. Behind the scenes, China and the US are collaborating together. So now I have Christopher John Bjerknes on for the last and final part of his interview, where we'll be discussing his new information on why he believes Trump and his merry men of lunatics are using Greenland as their new Eden. We've seen them now make the excuse to stop aid to Ukraine, which I agree with in terms of military aid. But what they actually really want is the minerals for the AI technology, which will be used in their Garden of Eden. Remember to do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and I'll see you in a week's time. Take care. Goodbye. Hi guys, welcome to this week's Classified. We're here off the back of last week's, if that didn't blow your mind enough, what's going on with the scapegoat situation there with Donald Trump. Now we're going to find out why he's so interested in Greenland. We covered this a few weeks back, but we're really going to go into it now. This is something that I started looking to kind of accidentally a year and a half ago, whilst looking into the Jeffrey Epstein stuff and stuff happening under New Mexico with Zorro Ranch. And I knew there was something going on under there. I believe Dulce Base and all of these things is probably, this is just my opinion, a prototype for what they're going to do here. That could be the case, but there's something going on under New Mexico, and I would love to figure out what it is. And it's not good, put it that way. But Christopher is here to talk about this Kabbalistic belief in the Garden of Eden, which is basically below the earth. It's the inner earth. Christopher, these aren't your beliefs. These are the beliefs that you're pointing out that these Kabbalists have. You said in the last interview that it was from 1666. I believe that was the age of enlightenment when they had to start revealing this stuff, from what I've read in your books. Let's just dive into it, Christopher.
Yeah, 1666 was on the Anno Lucas calendar that the Shabbatayan and Frankists and the Freemasons utilized is 566 in their calendar from the 6,000 years of creation when Adam was first created. And it was supposed to be the year that the Messiah would arrive and the 99 steps to the Messiah would arrive, that the rainbow would appear, signaling the arrival of the Messiah. And I recall how you got me into looking into these underground things, and I came up with all of the Judaic, the ancient Essenes being involved in the caves, etc. And I described, I believe even before I met you, that on Epstein's Island, he made it to represent a model of the Talmudic conception of the flat earth. And this all relates to that because in that conception of the flat earth, they often depict the Arctic as being in the center of the earth. So it therefore becomes the center of the Garden of Eden. And they depict it with a portal going towards this black sun. And this black sun has been referred to as the smoky god because it is the lake of fire. It is the burning core of the earth that emits smoke. So it is the black sun. And there are 7 layers of hell beneath, just as there are 7 heavens above, as we've discussed in the past. But this is a whole new conception that these Kabbalists and Freemasons have derived, and I've traced it all the way back to the Babylonians and the Epic of Gilgamesh, as well as to Plato, as well as to the Greeks' idea. The Greeks believed that Gaia is Mother Earth, and Uranus was the skies and heavens, and that Uranus and Gaia together conceived their children, and that their children were forced by Uranus pressing down on Gaia to engage in intercourse with her, forced the children into her womb inside the earth, and it was very cramped and uncomfortable. And again, this is something that has been flipped around in Kabbalah to say that the inner earth is actually paradise, and it's the surface of the earth which is hellish. And it was only hellish while Uranus was pressing down on Gaia to produce more children. So Kronos castrated Uranus, and his seed became the foam of the seas, and the heavens got pushed up so that we have this area between the earth and the heavens, this area of the atmosphere in which human beings can now exist and roam free. And all of these were conceptions of the Greeks. They wanted us to conceive of the surface of the earth as being a beautiful place. And this is a place of the golden age of the Greeks, in which their garden, the Garden of Hesperides, produced all these fruits and everything else that human beings could consume. And then technology came along and agriculture came along and made men work for their food and enter into the successive ages of the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, the Heroic Age, and ultimately the Iron Age. And human beings became progressively corrupted in this atmosphere that ought to be paradise. And they believed it would all be cleansed, and then a new paradise would form. But we have the Kabbalists inverting all that. And the Kabbalists believe that there is an inner earth, that the core of the earth is hollow, and this is their beliefs, not mine, and that within this core is an inner sun, and this sun never moves and is always lit. And if you read the Kabbalistic writings, they say that in the Messianic era, the sun will always shine, and it will be brighter than ever before. And they will be in this paradise. People don't realize that this paradise is hell. This paradise is the underworld. And I found a string of Kabbalistic and Freemasonic literature that describes exactly all of this. And they describe the idea that the earth has portals into this inner earth at the north and the south. And some of these depict the South as being holy, and that the wicked are exiled from the holy South up towards the North. And as we discussed before, a couple shows back, the North is considered evil in the Bible and in Midrash Talmud and Talmud. It is Sophoni, the northerner. Lilith is the northerner, Sophoni. So this is the realm of the devil. And on the inside of that sphere of the inner earth, in the north is the region where the wicked are exiled. And then from there, they were further exiled to go through the portal of the North Pole onto the surface of the earth. And that became humanity on the surface of the earth. And all of these Freemasonic Kabbalistic writings, all of these fantasy novels that we see depict this divine race inside the earth. And they all arrive at the conclusion that the people on the surface of the earth were the exiled people of this Garden of Eden within the earth. So let's look at this lineage of literature. Now, I neglected to include Margaret Cavendish's book, The Blazing World, which was published in 1666. Maybe at some point we can go back to all that, because I was so excited about this letter that Casanova, the infamous womanizer, the philanderer, the most famous womanizer in history. A person is called a Casanova if they are themselves a womanizer, and this has been romanticized. He was also a Freemason and a Kabbalist, and he had patrons, very wealthy patrons, royalty, who were, and lesser nobility and nobility, who were Freemasons and Kabbalists, and they sponsored him and gave him a place to live and took care of him. And he wrote an 1,800-page novel in several volumes called Ickonic, A History of Edward and Elizabeth. And this has been abridged and partially translated. It was translated first into German in an abridged form that included this letter from Casanova to his patron, the Count of Waldstein. And in this letter, he describes exactly what this novel is all about. But that letter was never translated into English, as far as I know. So I translated it into English and made a video in which I give that full translation, both written and audio, and I show the full text of this letter in its original French. And let me get out of the way and show people. This might be interesting for them. So this is a letter to the Count of Waldstein addressed directly to him that explains why he took advantage of this situation of being freed up to write this 1,800-page book about this inner earth, which he directly said is the Garden of Eden. And I have, let me pull up my translation of it. It'll only take me a moment if people will bear with me.
While you're pulling that up, I'd just like to sort of add to that. When you go on the Chabad Lubavitch website and type in Third Temple of Solomon, they explicitly describe Solomon's third temple, if you believe there was ever two, as a gateway between heaven and earth and a broadcasting system to the rest of the world. So, you know, they're telling you as well. So I just wanted to put that in there that, you know, the guys that Trump, Netanyahu, Malay are all around, they're telling you these things as well.
Amazing. So this is my translation of this letter, which appears as kind of a prologue to the book. And he said that instead of giving the Count, who patronized its production and publication, and it was only produced in a very limited number, I think about 350 copies, he was very disappointed in the reception of it. But it was all paid for by the Count of Waldstein, and he felt it more appropriate for him to explain these things to the Count in lieu of a dedication. And he says in this, the world in the interior of the earth is the earthly paradise of that Garden of Eden, whose existence we cannot doubt, although we do not know where it is. Some scholars have already asserted that it may be in the inner interior of the earth, but no one has gone to look for it. Jews and Christians alike naturally shied away from trying to discover it because they knew and know that God placed cherubim with fiery swords to prevent anyone from entering. Curiosity might well have led them to seek paradise in the center of the globe, but perhaps they were afraid of finding hell instead of paradise. So this book called Ickonic, is explicitly a book stating that the inner world is the Garden of Eden, as I was saying, the Kabbalists and the Freemasons believe. If God created our earth to be inhabited, it is probable that he intended that only its outer, let me start over. If God created our earth to be inhabited, is it probable that he intended that only its outer surface should be inhabited and not the inner cavity as well? So he is presuming there's an inner cavity, which he expressly stated was the Garden of Eden. No, the hive was not made for the bees to inhabit its outer wall. The muscle contains the mollusk within, and the soul, the mind, the seat of passions and virtues were placed by the Creator, not on man, but in man. So he's saying that man should be inside the earth and not on it, just as bees live inside the hive and not on its surface. Was veluti extra ipsos, as if outside themselves. The only exception being the Samaritans, whose virtue, according to Tacitus, was veluti extra ipsos. The famous core of the earth, about which so many philosophers have made tentative conjectures, is a necessity and can only be its habitable part, created by God for us to inhabit it forever. So he's saying that the Kabbalists want us to live under the earth. It is the Garden of Eden, from which we were driven out by disobedience to the Almighty. So we live on the surface because Cain, Adam, Eve, and Seth were driven out of the Garden of Eden onto the surface of the earth. When it is said that he drove us out, we were in it, and the outside of the interior can only be its walls, the crust, the outer circumference. When we made ourselves unworthy to live there, when we were suspected of having tasted the tree of life in order to become immortal, our rebellious race was condemned by God to settle outside the walls of the beautiful garden. So they're saying that we live in hell on the surface of the earth. And here we are now. I am particularly surprised that we have always called ourselves inhabitants of this world, while in reality, the expression does not apply to us at all. It cannot be appropriate for exiles. We are legitimate and proper settlers only on the surface of the earth, on which we crawl around, since it is, of course, hollow, if you will allow me to use that expression. So this is obviously part of where all this is coming from. And these are ancient beliefs, and I'll get into where they come from in the ancient world. Let us now return to the megamikers, the great small ones that Edward found as masters of that world. What is this new race of mankind of which we have never heard, whose existence no one suspected, which cannot have descended from Adam, which cannot have had anything in common with original sin, and thus has nothing to do with the incarnation of God? Now, this is important. His description of these great smalls describes them as androgynes, which is what I'm saying that the Kabbalists want to convert humanity, meaning the Jewish people, into 600,000 immortal androgynes. May we suppose that it could be the race descended from the first human couple, of which the 26th verse of the first chapter of the infallible Genesis speaks. The Holy Spirit does not tell us their names, but only lets us know the following verse, 27, that this formed two beings, of whom each of whom was male and female. Male and female created he them. So each of them was an androgyne. In verse 28, he tells them, fill the earth, implete, fill. Do you think that the word remplir, fill, could be synonymous with covering? So he was telling these androgynes, Adam and Eve, and Adam himself being an androgyne, to fill the earth, not to live on the surface of the earth. Would you say of an egg painted green that it was filled with green paint? they would say covered with green. So he's saying the Bible is saying that humanity is to fill the earth in an androgynous form and not to live on its surface. God did not create the megamikers and us to cover the earth, but to fill it. The firstborn stayed there, and we were cast out, were exiled on the surface in their hell. God created our eldest father, Adam, after the first week had already passed. There you will see with wonder trees. He describes huge trees, which becomes another theme in all this, because the garden was filled with trees that provided the food for them to eat. There you will see with wonder trees covered with innumerable serpents, which our hero destroyed with the help of his many children. Edward kills off these serpents in defiance of superstition, although nothing had proved to him that these serpents were of the race of those who seduced Eve, for they did not speak. So this is further proof that this is all about the Garden of Eden. There is only one sex, the megamikers, the great smalls. This is why we have this constant promotion of this androgyny agenda, and why the flag of the rainbow representing the Messiah is associated with becoming androgynous, because the Messiah's seed is supposed to produce these 600,000 androgynous beings, and they may even be engineering it so that these beings have two different heads, a male and a female head, or two different faces on one head looking to the left being the female, and one head looking to the right being the male. And you'll see this in all kinds of occult works. It shows these androgynes with two heads, male and female, or two faces, male or female. And they also have it male or female front and male or female back. Since all are male and female at the same time, they are neither male nor male. And there's a famous passage in Galatians where Christians are taught that there are neither males nor females. This is an ancient agenda. And we understand that reproduction depends not more on one of the two individuals than the other. And reproduction is becoming the process of the ripened fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, where we don't need individual genders to reproduce. This has been their ambition from the beginning. And this was brought about through the homunculi as creating living beings artificially through the ripening of knowledge, and to make them androgynous and to make them immortal. They are as Adam supposedly was before the fall. They are all the same, and so their instincts are the same, but you must not call them hermaphrodites because they are androgynes, for that would be a very dirty term and would be an injustice to them, for in reality they are not. And although you will not see it, you can easily imagine it, for although Edward is very modest in his style and knows how to spare the reader's modesty in every way, he does not prevent a wise man from understanding what he needs to know. So that is my translation of that letter that was found in Casanova's works. This completely vindicates everything I was saying about making the Garden of Eden on the inside of the earth, that there are portals because they enter through a lead coffin from a ship. They are dumped overboard and they enter through a portal in the Arctic after passing by Greenland, of all places. This partially stems from the Epic of Gilgamesh. He arrives at the mountain called Mashu, guarded by scorpion men, a long-established hybrid in Mesopotamian art and myth, particularly chosen to guard the boundaries of earth and sky, kind of like the cherubim. They recognize him as 1/3 mortal and 2/3 divine and allow him to pass through the mountain. So he is now entering the underworld. After 12 leagues of terrifying darkness, he emerges into the brilliant light of a jeweled garden. Jeweled garden is important because the new Garden of Eden will be the new Jerusalem. And Isaiah said that the new Jerusalem will be constructed out of jewels and all the gold and silver in the world. Originally, it seems described at some length. In the 10th tablet, the journey continues. Gilgamesh clothes himself in skins and defends his enterprise to Shamash, the sun god. So Adam and Eve were clothed in garments of skin. The Lord God made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. So we see these are all analogs to what is stated in the Epic of Gilgamesh, just as the flood and Noah's Ark are analogs to the Epic of Gilgamesh. We have Plato describing the god Apollo, the god of the sun, the equivalent of the Egyptian Ra, as the god Apollo surely is in such matters for all mankind the interpreter of the religion of their fathers, who from his seat in the middle and at the very navel of the earth delivers his interpretation. Now, the Kabbalists and the Freemasons take that to mean that there is an inner sun of their Apollo, Seth Typhon, and that it is in the very navel, the very middle of the earth, and is always shining and never moving.
That's fascinating, Chris. Like, just want to add a little bit there. So, in terms of trace that back to Trump as appears as Abaddon, which is Apollo, another name for Apollo, coming from the bottomless pit, and that's Revelations, I believe, 9:11. So this all fits exactly what you're saying. The whole coming from the bottomless pit, him playing the role of Abaddon, Apollo or Apollyon, same character, coming from the inner earth. It just makes sense.
Yes, and everything is inverted. Again, remember that the heavens are now hell, and hell is now this smoky god of the lake of fire illuminating this inner world that they perceive to be the Garden of Eden, to be their paradise, and they seek to become androgynous in this inner world. And again, just as we had that symbology of the goat being put out by Trump's family, you see this androgynous symbology everywhere. So they're trying to make what they want to happen reality by flooding us with this imagery.
And I just want to correct myself. I don't know if I said the Herbad website said earlier it was a gateway between heaven and hell. It's heaven and earth. I can't remember. I've got foggy, cold brain. But it's heaven and earth. And go and check that out on herbad.org. You will see that they are saying these absolute things. I mean, this stuff, when we first started talking, Christopher, about the Juliet Bryant stuff and the Lilith stuff and underneath Zorro Ranch, I mean, it looks to me that there could be a case for saying that they're trying to, I mean, test this stuff underneath New Mexico, and I would say the Boring Company of Elon Musk would fit in quite well as well.
And they've been doing this for thousands of years. As I've said, the early Christians lived underground. They had churches underground. They would conduct services in catacombs among the bones of the dead. The Essenes lived in caves, lived underground. In Libya, to the present day, there are underground cities that were inhabited by Jews for thousands of years. So this troglodyte lifestyle is one that they have always aspired to, and they believe that it provides them with the ultimate protection. There was a man named Captain John Cleves Sims Jr., who picked up on this idea that the earth is hollow and that it can be accessed at the poles. And he put out this circular in 1818, to all the world I declare the earth is hollow and habitable within, containing a number of solid concentric spheres one within the other, and that is open at the poles 12 or 16 degrees. I pledge my life in support of this and am ready to explore the hollow if the world will support and aid me in the undertaking. This was at the exact time that Mordecai Manuel Noah, also in America, was proposing the idea of creating a Zionist colony. It wasn't called Zionism back then, but in order to prepare for the restoration of the Jews to Palestine, he wanted to create a colony in Canada and America of Jewish people, and he set up this Zionist idea. And he wrote about this from, I think, 1814 to about 1849. He was a very famous American Jew and was a judge. And this was the exact same time in the 18 teens when the Rothschilds started to promote the idea that they were going to buy Palestine for the Jews. And we have at this same time this idea of this hollow earth being promoted, and not only being promoted, but these guys were trying to raise money, obviously from financiers, to fund these voyages to the North Pole and the South Pole, the Arctic and the Antarctic. And it was taken very seriously. And there was a book written about it by James McBride in 1826, where he laid out all of this theory in a very large volume. But it was also made into one of these fantasy novels, like Margaret Cavendish had done in 1866, and like Casanova had done in 1788. And this was the depiction given in 1820 of this hollow earth. And you can see that how all the modern things stem from this. And in this fantasy novel, it is this southern region, which is the Garden of Eden, and it is the northern region to depict the Edomite, Roman, Amalekite Christians who are the wicked. And the wicked are called Beelzebubians, as in Beelzebub. And they are the exiles. And from there, they were exiled further and roamed out onto the surface of the earth as the evil Hyperboreans, the white race of Northern Europeans who were eventually converted to Christianity. So this is depicting the Northern European peoples as being the evil race, being the Nephilim, and the Southern people as being the divine people of the Garden of Eden. In his novel, he writes, on my first appearance, they had apprehended that I was of that outcast race, the exiles from the Garden of Eden, he being a person from the surface, on the hell of the surface of the earth, outcast race, obviously relating to being cast out of the Garden of Eden. So this, again, this novel is cryptically depicting the inner earth as the Garden of Eden and the exile to the land of Nod and then to the surface of the earth. For it had been observed by those who had conveyed delinquents to the place of exile that the descendants of the outcast were enlarged in stature and size, in other words, the Hyperboreans, in other words, the Nephilim, owing to the grossness of their habits, and at the same time that they had lost their strength and activity, one of the pure race, it was believed, was able to live 3 times as much as any one of the degenerates, or to leap 3 times as high. Europeans are here being described cryptically as degenerates. Their suspicions of my being of the outcast tribe, he's a European, and so he is this exiled degenerate race of Edom that has to be exterminated, and exterminated in the North Pole, the American Siberia of the gulags, the Russian Siberia of the gulags that were being slated to be exiled to, or to leap, were allayed by the testimony of reverence to the Supreme Being, which I had given by falling on my knees and imploring the aid of heaven in my embarrassed situation, whereby they knew that I could not be unworthy of their regard. This is the Christian bowing down before the Israelite to be the scapegoat of the Israelite. I have felt not a little humbled by this account of the origin of the northern interior people, and cautiously avoided any observation that might discover to my intelligent conductor the suspicion which darted through my mind that we externals were indeed descendants of this exiled race, descendants of Cain, expelled from the Garden of Eden because we are the children of Satan who sinned against God. Some of whom penetrating the icy hoop being here at the North Pole, the portal. Near the continent of Asia or America, they are trying to capture all this territory for Russia and for the United States. Russia is controlled by Chabadnik Vladimir Putin. The United States is controlled by Chabadnik Donald Trump. The gross sensuality, intemperate passions, and beastly habits of the externals, again, degrading us completely, making us self-hating, self-deprecating, and subject to extermination because we're evil, all testified against us. I inquired of Surui where this place of exile was situated. He said that it was at the extreme northern part of the earth, as near the fountain of light and heat as mortals could go, without danger of perishing by fire. That's this region in the north, that they could only visit in the temperate season because during the rest of the year, the sun was seen directly overhead when the heat was so great as to render existence extremely painful. That's a description of hell. They used to believe that the North Pole might be very warm because it was subject to constant exposure to the sun when it was tilted on its axis facing the sun, and that this would be the hell that we Northerners belong in when we would be subjected to this intense heat. The sun was seen directly overhead when the heat was so great as to render existence extremely painful. Again, their redemption is obtained through our punishment. By this account, I knew that the place of exile must be situated somewhere on the verge of the rim of the North Polar opening, as there and there only could the sun be seen directly overhead without going to the external tropic. So this is, again, is the same repetition of all these same themes. There was notice in the Living Age, in an article about the Garden of Eden, taken out of Sharp's magazine from a traveler's notebook. It states, Pastellus will have it that paradise, meaning the Garden of Eden, this is an article on the Garden of Eden, was under the North Pole. Others contend that it was not limited to any particular place, but that it included the face of the whole earth, which was then one continued scene of pleasure until altered by Adam's transgression. So this is another instance in 1853 stating that paradise is beneath the earth and beneath the North Pole. And that's why Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are going after the Arctic. There was this book published, Paradise Found, in which he claimed he had come up with this thesis that Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, is found under the North Pole inside the earth and was the cradle of the human race. And this was published in 1885. And it also said that there is a central sun, and that the exiles came out of this Garden of Eden, which is inside the supposed hollow earth, and that there is a portal at the North Pole. From the foregoing chapters, it would seem as if nearly every imaginable site for the Gan Eden of Genesis had been proposed, that's the Garden of Eden, examined and found unavailable. One, however, remains, a region of rarest interest in astronomical, physical, and historical geography, the natural center of the only historic hemisphere. Considering the fascination of the subject and the inexhaustible ingenuity that has been expended upon it, it seems remarkable that it should be left to the closing years of the 19th century to bring forward and seriously to test the proposition that the cradle of the human race, the Eden of primitive tradition, was situated at the North Pole in a country submerged at the time of the deluge. And they put forth all kinds of evidence, he put forth in this book, of floating trees descending from the Arctic into Norway and other regions that were supposedly species which had never been found on Earth, of the giant mammoths and other prehistoric mammals and other animals that are found in the permafrost, and how this represents this expulsion from the Garden of Eden of these animals which no longer exist, and of this race of Hyperboreans. And he discusses the Hyperboreans that supposedly came out of this North Pole portal from the Garden of Eden to form humanity on the surface of the earth. And he proposed going back into to find this supposed paradise inside, and said that there would be a central sun.
There's another thing. Have you ever seen, just wanted to pick up on this. Have you ever seen the movie, Tim Burton obviously knew a lot of this stuff, Sleepy Hollow? It's a
Long
good film.
time ago, I watched
Yeah,
it with
yeah.
my
It's
kids.
it's clearly the tree is called the Tree of the Dead, and it's a portal to the underworld. So go and have a look at that. I mean, that's clearly what you're talking about there in all of these movies. So Sleepy Hollow, I understood, and it had the headless horseman in it, and I was like, what's the hollow bit about? But Sleepy Hollow is the name of the film. The tree is called the Tree of the Dead, and that's where the headless horseman comes out of. So it's everywhere. Go and have us. Johnny Depp obviously plays a character, the lead character, which I think is Ichabod Crane. But they know this
Yes,
stuff.
that's
They're
an old
telling you.
American story. That's where the Sleepy Hollow name comes from. But in terms of the tree of death, that is what the Zohar calls the Kelipodic tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You have the Sephirotic tree of life, and then you have the Kelipodic tree of death. And the Kelipodic tree of death is supposedly like the roots of the tree of life. It's the underneath of the tree of life. But as you can see, this is like an hourglass that they're trying to flip to make the above the below and the below the above. That's why they say as above, so below. They actually think that the above is what we would consider the below, and vice versa. Now, building upon William F. Warren's Paradise Found, the Cradle of the Human Race at the North Pole, building upon that book, there was once again this Freemasonic, and I found the Freemasonic and Kabbalistic cryptic codes that are encoded in this book, so that people who were Kabbalists and were Freemasons would realize what this was actually talking about. And in terms of fantasy literature, this is all over the place. You have the underworld in the book The Time Machine, where they feast off of the people who live on the surface. And in the end times, they're supposed to feast on the behemoth and the Leviathan and the Ziz. And that represents the Gentile people. So this is everywhere. You see this theme throughout so many movies. I mean, dozens and dozens of movies, that it's the underworld that's taking place. In The Matrix, the red pill and the blue pill represent the right-hand path and the left-hand path, epistrophe and emanation. And you'll notice that the characters, when they descend, get closer to the world that they want to be. So they are following the left-hand path to understand the matrix. And it is the people who are deluded into believing in God, who try to elevate themselves, who suffer by following the right-hand path, and they're deluded. It's the Satanists who actually have the knowledge, the gnosis, to arrive at the truth and to become their own gods. So this book, The Smoky God is that son of the lake of fire in the inner world. The Smoky God, or A Voyage to the Inner World by Willis George Emerson, 1908, in Chicago by Forbes. Forbes is a huge publishing house, heavily involved in finance. I think that might be the same Forbes. I bought this humble home and determined here, and again, this describes this inner earth as the Garden of Eden, and people being exiled to the surface as being who we are, the ones chased out of the Garden of Eden. I bought this humble home and determined here in the privacy of my own abode, sheltered by my own vine and fig tree. Vine and fig tree represents the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It is called a grapevine. That's why we see Jesus on the cross, and the cross being wrapped in grapevine. That's a frequent image because it represents the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And we had Adam and Eve covered in fig leaves because it is also portrayed as a fig tree. It's also been called a date palm and a pomegranate tree, etc. And with my books about me to make maps and drawings of the new lands we had discovered. This is the map of creation. This is the heavenly Torah that shows the map of the whole creation of the universe. And also to write the story, to build this narrative that becomes reality in detail from the time my father and I left Stockholm until the tragic event that parted us in the Antarctic Ocean. So this is a cryptic message to Kabbalists that he is in the know, that he's an occultist, that this is an occult book, and he is giving this knowledge from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, from his vine, from his fig tree, to show the map of creation and to teach people that the map of creation has the Garden of Eden in the supposed hollow earth and an inner sun in that map. And then we have another cryptic reference to the Freemasons. Olaf Janssen avers that in the beginning, the great world was created by the great architect of the universe. That is what the Freemasons call God. That is what they claim that G in the middle of the square and compass represents. And their word for God is the acronym GAOTU, God 2. That's what they call God, and it represents the great architect of the universe, so that man might dwell upon its inner side surface, which has ever since been the habitation of the chosen. We all know who the chosen are. They were driven out of the Garden of Eden, brought their traditional history with them. So the chosen of the great architect of the universe, of the Freemasonic God, the chosen should inhabit the inner earth, and those who were driven out by their traditional history are exiled on the surface of the earth. The Freemasons, as we discussed in that book by Max Heindel, are considered to be the children of Samael. They are supposed to be the intelligent ones bearing the Luciferian spirit of being creative and relying upon intelligence and reason instead of faith. And it is their job to be the masons constructing the temple. So it is to be our job, led by the Freemasons. Again, the Freemasons were the vastly dominant explorers of the polar regions, of the Arctic and the Antarctic. Almost every one of them was a Freemason. They planted Freemasonic symbols the way America put a flag on the moon, etc. All of that symbology. So they are supposed to lead us to build this Garden of Eden for the chosen in the northern regions. And a Freemason would immediately recognize this allusion to the grand architect of the universe to mean that Emerson is putting forth a Freemasonic agenda for the chosen. The chosen are the priests, The Freemasons are the masons. They are the builders. They ripen the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil for the priests of the chosen. In reality, the people within believe that the smoky god is the throne of their Jehovah. Now remember that Apollo's throne, the sun's throne, is in the middle of the earth, the navel of the earth. So they are creating the Seth Typhon equivalent of that as the smoky god of the lake of fire in the core of the earth, and is stationary. The effect of night and day is therefore produced by the earth's daily rotation. But he misunderstood. I think the Kabbalists all say that the day will never end once the Messianic era commences, that it will always be lit, as you would expect if they were a shell of the inner core of the earth, being the sun, a shell surrounding that, it would always be lit by that inner core. The sun would never set, in other words.
So I've got a question, Christopher. So I think people listen to this. Would they think that Donald Trump and the like are going there to live within the earth, or a time of Armageddon to survive it and then come out and then have their Garden of Eden flipped and on in Greenland? Or are they going to live within the earth? What is the idea there? I know Mark Zuckerberg's got bunkers and all sorts going on at his place.
Donald Trump's equivalent to the Freemasons. He represents the satanic side. You see him always pushing the idea of developing industry and technology and advanced weaponry and advancing science, advancing artificial intelligence. His right-hand man, his John the Baptist, is Elon Musk, promoting advanced rocketry, advanced artificial intelligence, robotics, robotic cars, drones, etc. So they are the Freemasons. They're to build this world. They're to lure us into thinking that it is our salvation, and it will be what preserves us in the future to create these technologies and to build this subterranean world. But what I anticipate them doing is hyping us this way and then getting our engineers and construction crews to move up into the Arctic to begin constructing this and not permitting them jobs anywhere else. And then this will eventually transition into a gulag system, as the Soviets did in Siberia, in which all Europeans will be forced up there into this hell. Remember, the North is described both as purgatory as well as the Garden of Eden in Lurianic Kabbalah. So we are then to enter this Gevura, this place of power and din, punishment, severity, judgment, to be judged and punished in the place of the Israelites, who are actually the guilty ones, as their scapegoat. So Trump is he is the Messiah, son of Joseph. He is the scapegoat. He represents the West, and he is treacherous. He leads us into our own demise in the name of saving ourselves. So we are being set up to all become these Freemasons who build this paradise, but we are not to live in it. We are to perish in the gulags above it. And they're not just constructing it in the North Pole. This is obviously some very deep Freemasonic and Kabbalistic understanding. But in Kabbalah, as well as Freemasonry, there's always a practical side, in addition to the mystical side. And it's the practical side which is most important. And as you started researching under New Mexico, it's all over the world, under every major city in the West, certainly. And in the ancient world, under all the ancient great cities, there were these tunnel complexes. And they have always been developing these technologies. And Elon Musk has a famous tunnel between his facilities. And he talks about creating roads underground as tunnels. And this is not that all these are necessarily bad ideas. They could potentially be very beneficial, but they are intended to ultimately produce our extermination and to create an underground paradise, a Noah's Ark, in which the chosen can survive the apocalypse while all of us are wiped out in the hell of the surface. And remember that their redemption is obtained by scapegoating us for their sins. So they want us to suffer the worst possible hellish fate that they can come up with, so that we provide them with the greatest cleansings of their sins. This also has the practical element of revenge, because they believe that all Europeans are descended from the Romans and bear that Roman soul that they equate to Esau and to Cain and to Samael. So they want to gain revenge on us and punish us for destroying Judea, destroying the temple, casting them out into the diaspora, and being anti-Semitic to them for 2,000 years, chiefly promoted by Christianity. But what they leave out is that the family of Philo Judaeus created Christianity, that they led the destruction of Alexandria Jewish quarter, that they led the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. And all that is made clear in Josephus. So it was they themselves who engineered all that, but who also engineered it so that they could scapegoat Europeans for it and scapegoat Christians for it. But it was done for their punishment partially, so that they could obtain redemption. But more than that, it was done to chase them to the ends of the earth so that they could subvert all the governments of the world, which was the plan that was laid out in Deuteronomy.
So my last question then, Chris, would be, what do these guys get out of them? If Trump is a Mason, which I agree with, obviously, and they're clearly doing the X sign and the seal of Saturn, and he's going to come back as possibly some sort of messiah. Do they believe their whole family lineage is going to be saved because they've done this, they've performed this role? How do you think that they feel it's going to affect their family, like the Musks of the world, who's got kids? And you just think, okay, this stuff is mental and mad, but how are their families going to be affected? What do they get out of it?
He gets out of it the idea that he is a God emperor, that he is God on earth, and that God has entered into him to perform this mission. And that's what he's told on a daily basis. And that I'm not the only one saying this. This is publicly discussed by leading Christians, and the Israelis are pushing this idea that he is the reincarnation of Cyrus from Isaiah chapter 45, verse 1, the Messiah, son of Joseph, who helped the Jews to rebuild their temple and to be restored from the Babylonian exile. And he is Jesus Christ. He is Messiah, son of Joseph. That's a tremendous ego boost for a psychopath like Donald Trump. He is also given fantastic wealth in this Saturnalian golden age. It is to be led by the wealthy. Did my camera just cut out? I
Sorry,
can no
yeah, you
longer
did cut
hear you,
down.
Richard.
Yep, sorry, I muted my mic and then your camera cut out. But that was fine now. We're back.
Oh, great. Did you hear what I said about the Saturnalian golden age being the age of the wealthy?
Yep, we did. Yep. So go from there. Yep.
And so he immediately, leading up to the inauguration, issued meme coins and became fantastically even more wealthy, and then declared that this was the golden age. The golden age among the Romans represented the age of Saturn, the age of wealth. His wife put on the regalia of Lua Saturni. And as I showed in one of my videos, that's all part of that ritual. I think they get off on it. They get off on being in the limelight. They enjoy the idea that they are being portrayed as divine figures. Then you have to think that since they're Kabbalists, they have been taught to believe in this idea of the reincarnation of souls. So they believe that their souls will be reincarnated now, even after they die. And they're even going beyond that to develop the technologies to make themselves immortal and to cure all diseases. So there's a whole slew of benefits for them that they see out of this. They get put in the limelight, they gain tremendous power, they are told they are divine figures. The Roman Emperor Caligula portrayed himself as a god emperor. He was going to sacrifice a pig in the temple, as another god emperor of the Greeks, Antiochus IV Epiphanes, did. And Antiochus IV Epiphanes put in a statue of Zeus. Caligula was going to put in a statue of Jupiter in the form of himself. So they believe that they have become not only demigods, but God on the face of the earth. And this goes back to the Egyptians. The Pharaoh was this messianic figure of the presence of God on earth. And that's what Trump believes he is. That's what he's been told he is. And they're psychopaths. They don't mind being satanic gods. They enjoy being satanic gods. And they can perceive how these chosen people, through agents like Wilbur Ross and Roy Cohn, have led them into this tremendous wealth, even when they have failed, and put them in the limelight and saved them again and again. And so they're a part of it, just as any Kabbalist would be a part of it. They see themselves in a role, they're playing this role, and they obtain great benefits from this role.
I sometimes think that if there is other races out there, which I'm assuming to me, then there clearly has to be, they look down on this place and think, what the fuck is going on down there? Because that is mad and they are mad. But you know what? You can make a muck up of something, but that's a huge cock up to make. Do you know what I mean? You go and I just don't know. It's such a stress they must be under, such a lunacy in 80 plus years of their life. What a waste of time not being that ridiculous. It's total lunacy, Chris. And I think people try to kind of think what they can't get their head around the fact that these people are that backwards that they believe this stuff and are doing this, but they clearly are, and you've proved time and time again over the decades that these people believe this stuff. The evidence is there; it's been written about for thousands of years, and we're coming to a head with this stuff right now. These people are lunatics, and fortunately for us, there's very few of them. Christopher, thank you for 2 hours of your time. This has been again a masterclass. Where can people find your work?
On my work at my website, cjbbooks.com. If you'd like to contribute, you can contribute there as well. There are links to all my social media there and places where you can purchase my books.
Well, guys, remember to share.
And thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. And anytime, doors always open. We need to get this information out there. And we'll keep sharing information back and forth. So, guys, remember to do your own research, come to your own conclusions. Please go and support Christopher's website. And I'll see you in a week's time. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.